Hello and welcome to my ultimate in-game Sciel guide. This is going to show you how you can do, I think it's over 20 million damage in a single turn with Sciel, potentially more if you have the patience to build up for it, but this is going to absolutely destroy both bosses and enemies alike and should be very capable of taking down just about any boss in the entire game very easily. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with my latest Expedition 33 content. So let's start things off by discussing what Sciel does, because she's a fairly unique character and she's going to have a very unique set of skills. So how Sciel operates is essentially she's going to have two types of attacks. She's going to have sun charge attacks and she's going to have moon charge attacks. Now when you do attacks that are going to have sun charges, they are going to typically apply foretell to enemies. Now you're going to notice this by seeing these little purple shards that are going to attach to enemies, and they will continue to glow until you do remove them. Now how you remove them is you do moon charge. You remove these foretell, they are going to typically give you added bonuses. Most of the moon attacks are going to say things like increased damage for each foretell consumed. So basically your sun charges are going to apply foretell and your moon charges are going to consume them, and that is going to kind of just give you a nice flow of gameplay. Now it's also very valuable to note that when you do use sun charges, you're going to get a sun card, and when you do use moon charge, you're going to generate a moon card. And whenever you have both a sun and moon card generated together, they're going to combine automatically, and then you're going to enter what is known as twilight mode. Now when you're in twilight mode, this is going to last for 2 turns, and it's going to give you a couple of bonuses while you're in twilight mode. Typically your foretell attacks are only going to give you 10 foretell per enemy, that's the cap, but when you are in twilight mode, this cap increases to 20, and therefore you're gonna be able to do a whole lot more damage, because that's going to give you just more things you can consume. On top of that, you're also going to do more damage whenever you consume these charges, so that's going to give you a lot more damage, and you're also going to be able to double the amount of foretell you apply on skills while you're in twilight mode. So essentially you really want to get to twilight mode as quickly as you can, and that is going to give you even more value with this build. Without further ado though, let's get into the guide and talk about what Sciel can do. The first thing we're going to start off with is going to be her weapon, the Chatian. The Chatian is going to be very unique in the fact that it is going to, all sun skills will apply 10 foretell, but damage taken is doubled. So the nice thing about this is when you do potentially an AoE sun attack, it's going to apply foretell to all the enemies, and this is going to allow you to combine this quite nicely with certain other follow-up attacks, which we'll talk about later on. But for now, all you need to know is the fact that it is going to apply foretell to all the enemies, and this is just going to give you far better AoE attacks, which is especially valuable in the late game, because very rarely in the late game are you going to find enemies that are going to come down by themselves. And if you do, you have other options for that as well. But when you do come across multiple enemies, this is going to be great. The other perks of this weapon aren't going to be that valuable. It's going to be mostly applied to burning damage, but we're not really worried about burning damage, so don't really worry about that. It's just pretty much level 4 that's valuable. The rest of that doesn't really matter a whole lot. Now let's talk about the skill set for Sciel. First of all, we're going to have Dark Wave. Now what Dark Wave is going to do is it's going to be a moon charge, and what that means is going to deal high dark damage to all 3 enemies, and it's also going to hit them 3 times, and this is going to also consume foretell for increased damage. So typically what you want to make sure you do is you're going to want to start things off with a sun charge. Something like Bad Omen could be quite nice. So what Bad Omen does is going to deal dark damage to all enemies with 2 hits, and it's also going to apply 2 foretell per hit. But thanks to our weapon, that amount of foretell is going to increase. So the reason why our weapon is going to be so valuable here is because the level 4 perk, which is going to sun skills, always apply 10 foretell. So instead of applying only 2, we're going to get now 10 per enemy. So it's going to give us a lot more foretell, which is going to synergize very well with Bad Omen, and therefore all the enemies are going to get 10 foretell on them. And that's going to be very valuable because things like Dark Wave consumes all foretell for increased damage, and when you have 30 foretell on all the enemies, obviously that's going to scale exponentially. Obviously this is going to be even better when you are in twilight mode, when you can generate even 20 foretell per enemy, and then it just becomes completely absurd. Next up, we're going to be having Final Path. Now Final Path is going to be what you're going to typically use for single enemies when you're fighting a boss one-on-one, or there's only one enemy left. This is typically what you're going to use. It's very expensive AP, cost of 9, so it's going to drain a lot of your AP. This is going to deal extreme single target damage. It's also going to apply 10 foretell, and it also is going to apply break damage, so you can potentially stun them, which can be quite nice. Then another one for bosses, also going to be a moon charge. This is going to be another one that is going to down consume foretell. So you're going to typically play Final Path to generate foretell, then you're going to play Twilight Dance to consume the foretell. This is again much more valuable against single targets, so like one-on-one boss fights rather than groups of enemies, as you are going to deal extreme single target damage 4 hits, and then this is going to also during Twilight extend the Twilight duration, and it's also going to consume all foretell to deal additional damage, so that can do a massive amount of damage to single enemies. Then we're going to have a bit of an interesting one. This one is going to be probably our highest potential attack, but it's also going to be, I guess, our biggest risk attack. This is going to be another moon charge attack, and this one is going to deal extreme dark damage to all enemies 1 hit, and it's also going to absorb the health of allies and enemies and consume foretell to generate more damage. Now the nice thing you need to know here is that you're going to be doing a massive amount of damage. However, there is one caveat, and that is going to be that you're going to practically drain all your allies down to 1 health, which is going to be obviously a big downside, but this could probably end the fight in 1 turn where you won't really care because there'll be nothing left standing to retaliate. So now it's also valuable to note that sometimes you can equip Luminars or Pictos to your allies that make them do more damage when they have below 10% of health. So this can actually help set those up if you want to. Otherwise, you could just use as a finisher or an opener. Maybe this just wipes out the entire board in one turn, which it probably will unless you're fighting extremely high level enemies. But otherwise, this is going to do massive damage with a little bit of a downside. But again, if you don't want the downside, you can always use Dark Wave, which is practically the same thing, but Dark Wave is going to be a bit safer because you're not going to damage your allies. Bad Omen is going to be there because we spoke about this a bit earlier, because of the fact that it's going to give you AoE foretell to pretty much all enemies, and this is going to give them a lot of foretell because of the synergy with the perk of our weapon. And this is going to just practically just be there to give like 30 plus foretell in one turn, which is obviously going to set up the rest of our attacks. Then we're going to have Phantom Blade. Now this one you can put whatever you want here. This one's not important at all. Phantom Blade is going to be able to do some okay damage and it can also break a target. You don't really need this. You can put whatever you want here. Sciel does have some nice support options, things that can heal allies. There's also ways to increase the damage your allies can do, so you can put whatever you want there. It's not very important. Then moving on to the Pictos. Now Pictos are typically going to be used mostly for their stats. However, to save some Lumina points, I decided to put some of the more expensive Pictos onto Sciel. You don't have to do this. You can put them as Luminas instead. I have Energy Master. I also have Cheetah and I have Sweet Kill. To unlock Energy Master, you're going to have to defeat the Serpent Fair. That's going to be a giant snake-like monster you're going to see flying in the sky. This you're only going to be able to defeat in the very later stages of the game. So if you don't have this Picto, it's not the end of the world. Don't worry about it. It's just going to be able to give you every AP gained is going to increase it by 1. So you can kind of just double your AP generation, which is sometimes quite nice for Sciel because she does have some very expensive attacks. And this is going to make sure that you have more AP for those attacks. But again, it's not necessary. You don't need this. It is just a nice to have thing. We're also making use of Cheetah. This one is quite valuable. It's not as valuable on Sciel as the other characters because she doesn't need to go 2 turns in a row to do her combo. But it of course is going to be very valuable to have. If you don't know how you get this, you're going to be able to get it by defeating the world boss, which is going to be known as Sprong. It's going to be a massive metallic rock-like monster you're going to see in the water. It has a lot of HP, especially if you're in the earlier stages of the game, so it could take a while to defeat. Simple attack pattern, so not difficult to predict, but it might take you a while to defeat it, especially if you are still in the mid to earlier stage of the game. But definitely worth it because I think Cheetah is one of the best Pictos in the entire game, and being able to attack twice is obviously incredibly valuable, but not necessarily needed for Sciel. You don't need this to make this build work. Moving on, next we're going to have Sweet Kill. Now Sweet Kill is going to recover 50% health on killing enemies. Not necessarily. The reason why I have this here is for the crit rate. I wanted the 36% crit rate. Actually, I would like more crit rate in this build. I would like to aim for 100. So if you want to put Pictos on that maybe don't have these Pictos, put Pictos on that are going to give you more crit rate, because having 100% crit rate is actually very, very valuable. And that's something actually I would like to have more of on this build, but I kind of want to save some Lumina points by using these as Pictos instead of Luminas. So I'm just going with 84%. Then moving on now to our Luminas. This is going to be where the magic really happens. The first thing we're going to have is base shield. Now base shield isn't required, but it is just a nice to have quality of life, since it's going to give you +1 shield if you're not affected by any shields at the turn start. And what this means is pretty much every single turn you're going to make sure that you're going to go into the next round with 1 shield, so you can kind of get a get out of jail free card from any hits from any monsters. The way you get this Picto is going to be going through the chosen path location on the world map, and this is going to then take you to a certain like arena. We have to fight multiple bosses one-on-one, and when you defeat all of them, you'll get this. Again, not crucial. It is definitely something you don't have to have, but it is nice to have. We're also going to have Dodger. I think this one is just something that I put on all my builds. It's just 1 Lumina point, and it's going to give you +1 AP on a perfect dodge once per turn. So it's just pretty much free AP points and just nice to have. Now moving on, we have Energizing Start 1 and 2. We also have Energizing Turn. This is all going to generate us extra AP, especially Energizing Turn, which is going to give you +1 AP on turn start. But because we're using the Picto Energizing Master, that's going to double it. So we're practically going to get +2 energy on turn start thanks to the Energizing Turn. And this is going to make sure that we have enough AP to make use of all Sciel's attacks, because she does have some pretty expensive attacks, and having enough AP is going to be very valuable. Now, this is where we are going to kind of want to put as many of these as you can in your build. Now, again, if you don't have enough Lumina points or you're missing some of these Pictos, it's not the end of the world. Try put on as many of these as you can, because the ones that do extra damage is going to help make this build quite crazy. Now, when you have, let's say, 1,000,000 damage and you add 50% to it, that's going to be quite a lot of damage. When you add another 50%, that's going to be quite a lot more damage. And when you add another 25% or whatever, it's going to obviously scale quite a bit. So the more of these you have, the better your build is going to be. So moving on now, we have First Offense. This one is going to first hit dealt and taken will do 50% more damage. We have 9,600 health on our Sciel. So taking more damage isn't the end of the world, because we are going to have quite a lot of HP to help protect her. 50% more damage, obviously being quite nice. Speaking of more damage, we're also going to have Glass Cannon. Glass Cannon is going to give us 25% more damage, but the damage taken will be 25% more. And that's why we have so much HP in this build, because obviously we're going to take a lot of damage when we get hit. So we also have some nice defensive Luminas as well. We're also making use of Full Strength. This one is going to give us 25% increased damage when we are at full health, and that's going to obviously be very nice for the early stage of the game. Making use of Immaculate as well. This one you're going to be able to find from defeating a main story boss. I'm not going to spoil exactly where. It's going to be found in Act 2, somewhere in the middle of Act 2, so just progress the main story and you will eventually come across this. This one's going to give us 30% increased damage until a hit is received. So this is just doubling down on the fact that we want to, in the early stage of the game, be able to do extra damage. We're also making use of Inverted Affinity. What Inverted Affinity does is going to mean that we are going to, for 3 turns, we're not going to be able to heal, but we're going to do 50% damage during those 3 turns. So let's just make sure that Sciel in the early stage of the game is going to be able to do as much damage as humanly possible. We're also making use of Last Stand Critical. Now this one is not at all needed. I just had some Lunar points left over and I didn't know what else to put here, so you can put on this one. This one's going to give you 100% more critical chance when fighting alone. Not at all needed, but it can be nice to have at times. We're also making use of Painted Power. This one is going to be a must-have for this build because obviously when we're trying to build a build that's doing millions of damage and we're capped at 9,999, that is going to be a little bit of a problem. Now you're going to be able to unlock this during the main story. I'm not going to tell you exactly where, other than the fact that you're going to be able to get it at the end of Act 2, and this is going to open up your build possibilities a whole lot because it's going to give you pretty much uncapped damage, so you're going to need this one to get the most out of this build. If you want to use this build without Painted Power, then you can probably start taking off a lot of these extra damage percentage luminars because you won't necessarily need all that extra damage since you're going to be hitting a cap anyway. Then Roulette, you're going to be able to find in the Gestural Village that you should be able to find pretty early on in the story. Every hit will give you either the possibility of doing either 200% more damage or you will do half damage. Now, if you do the math on it overall, this is going to give you increased damage. So whilst this is going to be a little bit inconsistent, overall, you're going to be able to do a whole lot more damage. So it is worth to put this on, even though it can be a little bit on the dice roll at times. We're also making use of SOS Shell. This is another defensive perk since we do take a lot of extra damage from our luminars, giving us some downsides. And this one is going to be when our health falls below 50%, you are going to apply a shield, which is going to help protect you. We're also making use of Second Chance. This one is a very expensive luminar, so we don't have Luminar points. Cut this one first because this one is a very expensive. At 40 Luminar points, you can definitely make use of a whole lot of other things in this cost. I had a lot of Luminar points available, so I made use of this, but you definitely don't need this one. You unlock it during the main story. Again, I'm not going to tell you exactly where, other than towards the end of Act 2 is where you're going to unlock this one. So just progress the main story if you don't have it, and eventually you'll unlock it. We're also making use of Warming Up. This is going to give us 5% increased damage per turn. It can stack up to 5 times, so an extra 25% damage potentially. And you're going to be able to obtain this by defeating Grosse Tate, which you can find on the overall continent. We're also making use of Solo Fighter, which gives us 50% more damage if fighting alone. Not that that's going to be that relevant, but at times you do fight alone, and that can be some nice extra damage there. Now let's look at the attributes. Since our weapon does scale with both luck and vitality, you can see we have maxed out our luck and our vitality completely. Vitality being maxed out is quite nice as well because of the fact that we are going to take so much damage. So we have a massive pool of health of 9,600. Luck obviously very valuable for the crit rates, and we do actually want more crit rates. So even at 99 luck, we still don't have enough crit rate. So again, pictos that can give you improve your crit rate will be very valuable here. Defense we have at 27, not too high, but just enough that we do have a little bit of defense. And agility is at 17. I actually think I would improve the agility a bit more. Might want to take a bit off of defense and put a bit more into agility, I think. And our might is going to be pretty high as well at 28, so we can do as much damage as possible. Overall, this is going to be pretty much the best damage I've been able to do with Sciel. She is, I would say, the second highest damage potential character in the game at 20 million plus damage a hit. That is pretty insane, and that is capable of doing great work against most bosses. There's very few bosses that can survive hits like that, and the ones that can survive that probably can't survive much of it. Only Mael could do more damage than her as far as I'm aware. And that is going to pretty much sum up our Sciel guide. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comment section below, how are you finding Expedition 33? What are your favorite characters and what are your setups for them? I'd love to find out, and I'll see you guys again next time. Take care, everyone, and bye-bye.